everybody, it's Manny back here once again. Welcome to DFS Zone. I got a brand new video for you guys today. I'm going to discuss with you what I believe are the best possible plays for us as DFS players in the wide receiver position here in week 2 of the NFL season. And before I get started, man, I appreciate you guys drop a like, man. I appreciate those who have made an effort to drop a like. If you feel the content is helping you, you're getting some good information, please drop a like. It does help my ranking, it helps my channel, and it also keeps me motivated to continue to come out and provide you the best possible videos with the best possible information so that you can have better success every week in the NFL. And then of course we're going right into the NBA very shortly, and those videos will come at you pretty much every day, so take advantage of it. Other than that, if you have not subscribed, this is your first time here, hey, take a look at some of my previous videos you want. I did cover the whole WNBA season, so I have a lot of videos there. I have videos that I started back in March and April with the NBA. Check it all out, and if you like what you see, please do subscribe and make sure you put on those post notifications. This way you do not miss any uploads. I do a live show every Saturday for the NFL. We were on for over 2 hours last week. I will be on again this Saturday to discuss the slate even further, to discuss the picks and possibly any other additional value plays that I might come across over the course of the next few days, because obviously injuries and value plays come about as the week progresses during practices. All right, so with all that being said, let's just dive into it. I got some decent wide receivers for you guys this week, man. My first guy that I'm going to definitely speak about is Michael Thomas. Antonio Brown, AB, is definitely in play. There's no doubt about it. He's in a great matchup going up against Kansas City. It should be a great shootout, but I really love Michael Thomas. I had Michael Thomas. I gave you as one of my top receivers last week. I'm on him again this week. I also am on Drew Brees. If you saw my quarterback video yesterday, I did put out Drew Brees as a possible great play this week at quarterback. I normally don't pay up for quarterback, but I feel that he is definitely an awesome play. Same thing here, Michael Thomas. I love paying up for wide receivers and running backs, especially on FanDuel and on DraftKings. More importantly, DraftKings, simply because of the PPR. You get 1 point for every reception, and that definitely, really boosts up your fantasy points. But Michael Thomas here against Cleveland. New Orleans last week, he had a massive week, as we all know. They scored 48 points. He had 17 targets. He put down 16 receptions, 180 yards, and 1 touchdown. He put up 30 FanDuel points last week and 42 DK points. I mean, inside the 20, inside the red zone, he was very, very well, very efficient. He had 3 targets. All 3 targets he made. He had 3 receptions for 21 yards, 100% catch percentage, which is fantastic, and 1 TD. All right. As we know, last year he was one of the top receivers. He was 3rd leading receiver in the league, 109 receptions. He had 1,156 yards last year with a 70% catch percentage. So he was definitely an excellent receiver last year. He's 8,800 this week on FanDuel and 8,600 on DK. Both a little pricey, but I think he's in an excellent matchup here against Cleveland. Cleveland last week gave up 472 yards. 472 yards to Pittsburgh. All right, that was 28th. For after the first week of the season, 28th in pass defense, really coughing up to the receivers. 313 out of those 472 yards, 1 touchdown. Okay, granted, Cleveland did pick off Big Ben 3 times, so we got to give him a little bit of credit there. Antonio Brown did get 93 yards out of so I'm trying to compare the 2 receivers. You got a stud receiver in Antonio Brown. AB had 93 yards with these guys last week. So, definitely also gives me a little bit of a check mark, a little bit more good feeling of Michael Thomas being able to be successful here as well. In 2017, they gave up 229 yards per game. This is Cleveland. That was 19th last year in pass defense with 229. Their defense last week gave up overall 15 receptions to receivers, 218 yards, 1 TD. 46.6 DK points to the receivers of the Pittsburgh Steelers last week, and 36.1 FanDuel points for the same position of receiver. In the red zone, 66% opponents scored on them. All right, so 2 out of 3 opportunities for Pittsburgh, they scored. New Orleans, granted, they played against Tampa Bay. They had 5 opportunities, and 4 out of the 5 times they were in the red zone, they scored. So I really like the whole idea of this offense going up against it. It could be, again, Cleveland. If Cleveland was able to go into play Pittsburgh last week and be able to have those kind of numbers. And New Orleans, I don't expect New Orleans here to cough up 48 points like they did last week and give Cleveland the Tyrod Taylor 77 yards rushing and so on and so forth. I don't expect that. But again, I think both New Orleans is going to be a little bit better, and I think Cleveland is capable of doing better as well. So I'm very interested to see if they can handle another top-notch receiver like Michael Thomas. So under these circumstances, I definitely love the matchup. I think Michael Thomas is definitely someone that we all should be considering. After Michael Thomas, I mean, all these guys here, man, Hopkins, these guys are all in play. Julio Jones, I mean, Tyreek Hill had a massive week last week. He is one that I think should be someone you should target. I had him last week as one of the top receivers, and he had an excellent week. I mean, he really had a massive week. But I really love the matchup for Keenan Allen here. He's going up against Buffalo. Keenan Allen, 8K. Okay. On DK, he's 7,800. In his first game last week, he had 11 targets, 8 receptions, 108 yards, and 1 touchdown. He put up 20.8 fantasy points here on FanDuel, and he put 27.8 on DK. Last year's stats for Mr. Allen: 102 receptions, 1,393 yards, 6 TDs, 87 yards per game. He had a 64.5% catch ratio. In the red zone in 2017, he was pretty good inside the 20, 11 receptions, 79 yards for 4 touchdowns. And inside the 10, he had 7 receptions for 27 yards and 4 TDs. So that means when he got in the red zone, he was more efficient inside the 10 with 4 touchdowns than he was inside the 20. He did play against Buffalo last year, and that game was at home. 34.2 FanDuel points he put up. He had 13 targets, 12 receptions for 159 yards and 2 TDs. All right, 13 yards per catch. That was an awesome game by Keenan Allen. I expect no different. Buffalo was really poor last year. Last year, Buffalo was gave up 370 receptions to receivers, 3,844 yards. That was 240 yards per game, 14 TDs. After game 1 of last week, 21st in passing defense to start the year, 252 yards and 3 touchdowns. Gave up 42.7 DK points and 37.2 FanDuel points to the receivers in last week's game against Baltimore. In the red zone, Baltimore had 6 opportunities, and all 6 opportunities in the red zone, they scored a touchdown. It's crazy. 6 out of 6 opportunities. The Chargers had 2 opportunities in the red zone, and both had 2 TDs last week when they got in the red zone. So they are at 100 at 2 for 2. So if Buffalo's going to be handing over TDs, then I would see the Keenan Allen and company, including Phillip Rivers and Mr. Gordon, who I also gave you as one of my top running backs this week, are in a favorable position. And I didn't give you Phillip Rivers, but you got to throw in Phillip Rivers there as well in this matchup. All right? So that's where I'm at. Keenan Allen, definitely a fine play, man. The numbers all say that he should have a pretty decent game against this team. 11, 8, and 108 yards. That was fantastic. 20 fantasy points. My next receiver that I'm really targeting for this weekend that I really love in this matchup as well is Mr. Landry. All right? If I can find him. Jarvis Landry, 6,700. He is 6,300 on DK. Last week against Pittsburgh, he had 15 targets, got 7 receptions for 106 yards. He put up 14.1 FanDuel points, and he put up 20.6 DK points. Now I like him in this position here because I feel that obviously New Orleans is probably their favorite at home. They are a high-powered offense. I can see Cleveland falling behind, and I can see Jarvis Landry getting even more opportunities to get throws, to get catches, simply because they're going to have to play catching up. And just for that, I really like him more so in that position. Hate to say it, we don't want to see Cleveland fall behind by a whole lot, but if they fall behind in this game by 2 scores or so, you can see that you will see that Tyrod Taylor is going to try to. And now the other thing I also like is that Tyrod Taylor is a mobile quarterback. He's a dual threat quarterback. So with him moving around in the pocket, getting into the outsides, he buys more time for Landry to actually find himself in the zones, in the coverages, and put himself in position to even get more additional touches and more targets. So that's more of a reason why I love the whole matchup. But going back to Mr. Landry, last year, as we know, last year he was the top receiver as far as receptions. He had 112 receptions last year, 987 yards, just under 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns. He had 61.7 yards per game on average, and he was at 70, pretty much almost 71%, catch percentage. So he was really a major target for his Miami team. And this is also with a poor quarterback. I don't think Tannehill, I think Tyrod Taylor is a lot better quarterback, in my opinion, than Ryan Tannehill. So that's one of the other reasons why I'm also considering that this is a good, fine play for him here, because he does have the quarterback that can free him up a little bit more. All right. Versus New Orleans last year, they did play against New Orleans last year, and they lost 20-0, and that was obviously when he was with Miami. He had 7 targets in that game, 6 receptions, 40 yards, no TDs. New Orleans is coming in 28th. Last year, New Orleans last year was 15th in pass defense, giving up 225 yards per game and 22 TDs. This year, to start off, they already have fallen to 28th in pass defense after the first game of the season. They gave up 417 whopping yards last week to Ryan Fitzpatrick with 4 TDs. I don't think New Orleans is gonna, give up that many points again. I foresee them being better defensively as the weeks go on. It may happen this week, but I believe Cleveland has a chance here, especially Landry, to be able to get a lot of targets. In the red zone, New Orleans gave up 51% to oppositions. The oppositions 51% of the time scored a touchdown when they got to the red zone, and so far this year, 50% percentage so far this year as well. So Tampa Bay had 4 opportunities, and 2 out of the 4 opportunities they were able to put it in. Giving up, man. These guys are giving up 32.6 DK points to receivers thus far in that game. Obviously against Tampa Bay last week, and 26 FanDuel points against Tampa Bay as well. So a lot of points. I really like the whole idea of Javaris Landry getting more than, easily I would say, more than 10, maybe 11 targets in this game. My next individual that I really like in a matchup situation is Emmanuel Sanders. Now, I was on him last week too, but I named him as one of those possible good plays, especially during the live show. And he had a terrific game against Seattle. I felt that Seattle was vulnerable, and he had 11 targets, and he seemed like he already had a good rapport, good connection already with Case Keenum during the course of the preseason. So I really felt that he was going to be someone who's going to have pretty much probably a much better season than he had last year. He already has 10 receptions this year. He only had 40 somewhat receptions last year. But he's here at 6,800 this week, on DK 6,200, pretty much the same. All right, he's going up against Oakland. He put up 32.5 DK points last week and 24.5 FanDuel points. He had a massive game, as you can see here, 11 targets, 10 receptions, 135 yards, and 1 TD. Last year's numbers, he pretty much had 47 receptions for the entire year, 555 yards, 11.8 yards per catch with 2 TDs, and 46.3 yards per game. That was a 51% catch percentage for him. But again, we have to consider all things now. He has a much better quarterback now. Denver has not had a steady, good quarterback in years. And I'm not going to bear his numbers last year as opposed to what he may have this year with a better quarterback. And now that we have seen that he has a great rapport and he's building a great connection with Case Keenum, I could see him having easily more than his 47 receptions he had last year. So he's definitely in a good spot. They played against Oakland twice last year, Denver, and again, because of the poor quarterback play, I think he was not much involved, and he was not well connected with those quarterbacks, because he only had 5 targets in game 1 and 6 targets in game 2, only 11 targets in 2 games, and only 7 receptions for only 39 yards total, and only about 4-5 fantasy points combined, which is horrific. So I'm not going to bear it on that. I really believe that that's more of a production of not having a good quarterback and not being in position to get more targets. I would think maybe the quarterback had a better connection, or at least from what I've seen, those particular quarterbacks last year had a little bit better rapport with Mr. Thomas. But I think Emmanuel Sanders is going to work out well with Case Keenum. I think he's in a great matchup here. Oakland last season was 26 in pass defense. They gave up 241 yards per game and 24 TDs. 68% completion against them throughout the year. All right, quarterback rating against them were 101.8. So the quarterbacks really tore up Oakland last year, and it seems like it has not changed. 2018, their first game against the Rams, 225 yards, 2 TDs. All right, to Mr. Jared Goff. Goff has 17 fantasy points, and Cup had 15, and Mr. Cooks had 11, and they gave up 25.2 DK points. And if you think about Emmanuel Sanders with Case Keenum, Case Keenum put up 22.2 last week, and Emmanuel put up 32 and 24 respectively on FanDuel and DK. I see that as that's over 50 somewhat fantasy points between the two guys. I can see them having those same numbers again this week easily, if Mr. Goff and Cup and Cooks were able to only put up pretty much like 40 between the three, and they still got the win. So I really like the matchup here. I think Emmanuel Sanders is definitely in a fine spot. You know, I think for me, those are the top 4 plays that I really think are the best possible plays for us this week. But you know, there are some notable worthy mentions here. There are a couple of guys that I really think I like as well. Like I mentioned before on the top, I had him last week. Tyreek Hill is definitely in a good matchup. He's going up in a high-scoring game. All right, he had a monster game last week, and he's going up against another team where they could put up a lot of points on. This should be a high-scoring game. I could see this game in the high 20s. Vegas has them, I think, 28-24 Pittsburgh. I believe this game could possibly have both teams in the 30s. You know, because Kansas City has a really high-power offense. I think they're more powerful with Mahomes, Hill, Hunt, okay, and Kelsey than Pittsburgh has right now. They don't have a stud tight end, and they don't have Le'Veon Bell. They do have Connor, who I think is going to be a fine play this week, and they have, of course, AB, Antonio Brown. You know, but I mean, I love the whole idea of Hill, Mahomes, and Hunt here versus this team. And then last week, you know, Pittsburgh last week gave up 161 yards only, but they gave up 77 rushing yards to Tyrod Taylor. And 34 DK points and 26 FanDuel points. Those are some big numbers. And Tyreek Hill had a monster week last week. He put up 38. And then I really see him, Mahomes, and possibly Kelsey, if they can get him involved, they can be explosive for over 70, 80 FanDuel points combined. So this is not a bad team here, folks, to have a team stack on with Hill, throwing in their Hunt and Mahomes, and even or going with Travis Kelsey. So Tyreek Hill, I think, is a fine play here as a little, you know, as an additional play. I think another person that I'm really looking at as well is Mr. Nelson Aguilar. I like Nelson Aguilar in here against Tampa Bay. As we know, Tampa Bay really had a rough week last week. He's in a good spot here without Alshon Jeffrey here. Should get a lot of targets, man. He only had, I think it was 5. Yeah, he had 10 targets last week, and he got 8 receptions and 33 yards, 9.5 fantasy points. I could definitely see him having even more production this week. The pass defense for Tampa Bay last week, man, they gave up 268 yards to New Orleans and 2 TDs, 66 DK points, and 50.8 FanDuel points. So those numbers are scary to me. I think that Nelson Aguilar can possibly have a massive game here for Philadelphia. The next person that I'm thinking about is also, you see, Marquise Goodwin. Marquise Goodwin has that quadricep problem. He has that big bruise, probably a hematoma there. I've had one of those before playing football when I was younger. Those things take a while to heal. So I don't know. He might be someone that might not be out. If he is out, the second round pick, I think, could possibly be a very sneaky play, and he's very low owned. He will probably be definitely very low owned and very cheap, and that's Dante Pettis, if I can find him here. Second round pick. Dante Pettis. Where are you, Dante? Let's just do this. Dante Pettis. If I can find Dante Pettis. What? There he goes right here. Sorry, guys. He is all the way down here. He is pretty cheap at 4,500. He was a second-round draft pick for the San Francisco 49ers. I could see Garoppolo, man. Really, Garoppolo had really a rough week last week. He had 2 guys drop touchdowns on him. So he would, if he would have gotten at least one of those, or 2 or both of those touchdowns, obviously San Francisco probably would have pulled out the game and won that game. But Dante Pettis in a good spot here, man. Only had 5 targets. 2 receptions for 61 yards, 1 touchdown. He did have a fumble. He did 13, but he's a second-round draft pick. I could see him getting a lot more touches, especially if Mr. Goodwin is not playing. All right, so Marquise. So we'll see how that goes. I think those are 3 good plays. I also like Quincy Enunwa for the Jets. You know, Quincy Enunwa had a nice game last week. He's only 5K here, and I think he's even cheaper in on DK. He could be a nice play. He and him, as well as like Emmanuel Sanders with Casey Keenum, he seems to have a nice little connection building up with rookie sensation here, Sam Darnold. You know, so I can see him and Darnold continuing what they started last week in Detroit. Obviously, they did play against Detroit, but you know, again, they're going up against Miami. Miami has had issues with slot receivers over the years and with like tight ends, giving up a lot of touchdowns. And he's more like a tight end type of mold receiver, plays a lot of slot. So I can see Quincy still getting another maybe 10 targets this week and maybe even getting another touchdown. And, you know, to think that last week they played against Delaney Walker, and Miami had, you know, their issues with Delaney Walker until, you know, he finally was taken out of the game with that bad injury that took him out. That's actually, you know, put him out for the season, which is terrible. But I could see him. I could see him doing well, man. And, you know, Delaney Walker had about 7 fantasy points in that game, and this gentleman put up 15 against Detroit in a poor outing for Detroit. And they're going up against a team in Miami, like I said before. They have trouble with slot receivers and so on. So I think those guys are, you know, he's another one that could be definitely a nice play there at $5,000. Watch out for him. There might be a few more. I will probably have that information more so. Any other information that comes out, I'll be watching the news. Today is Thursday. There's a couple, obviously, injury news that we still got to be looking out for as we get closer and closer to game time. But I will discuss that further and be able to obviously take Q&A from you guys on Saturday night when we discuss the slate at 7 p.m. here at DFS Zone. So pretty much that's all I have for you guys. I think those are the best possible plays. Hey, again, man, you know, drop a like on the video. I appreciate it. If I can get 50 or more likes, 50 or more likes is what I'm aiming for almost every time I do a video. If I can get that, I truly appreciate it. Other than that, if you're new to the channel, hey, again, take a look at some of the other videos. You know, this way you have a better idea of where I come from, what I actually do, and what kind of content I can what kind of content I'm able to give you on a regular basis. And with that, basically subscribe down below if you have not done so already. Put on your post notifications, and remember that if you don't put those on, you're not going to get the videos right away. I've had 1 or 2 people during the WNBA season, you know, ask me, hey, I see you doing live shows, but then again, you know, I didn't get the notification. Well, it was because you didn't put your post notifications on. So please put those on when you subscribe, and this way you get the information right away. All right, guys. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much it. I will be back, obviously, with another video tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to tackle the tight ends and the defenses, so you'll be on the lookout for those. And then, of course, Saturday is the live show, so make sure that you are in tune, that you definitely are subscribed so that you can actually be able to join us for that discussion. All right? Everybody have a good night.